Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to give you part one of my review of the Canon RF mount 50mm F1.2L series lens. Now, this, of course, is one of the premium portrait type lenses that was released initially with the Canon EOS R, and of course will probably sing the most when we move on to a higher resolution body. These 50mm and 85mm f1.2 lenses truly are very serious optical performers, and of course they are also physically large, heavy, and expensive lenses. However, as some have noted already, in many ways they are kind of the equivalent of autofocusing versions of Zeiss Otis lenses with incredible correction, incredible detail, but more usability due to them being autofocus lenses. Now today in part one of our review, we'll be looking at two different metrics. We'll be looking at the features, the handling, some physical comparisons and evaluations of the lens itself, how it actually performs here on an EOS R body. We'll also be looking at the autofocus performance, both for stills, for shooting portraits, and then of course for video as well, and specifically how much sound there is for if you're going to be doing video pulls and using it for that application. In part two of our review, which will be coming in a week, we will be covering image quality along with video performance and giving you a final verdict on the lens at that point. So stay tuned for that. So we're going to jump in first of all, and we're going to go hands-on with the RF50L. And so just before we do that, just to clarify in case you're kind of new to Canon's RF, so this RF lens, RF mount, is only compatible with either, at the moment, either the EOS R or the EOS RP or any subsequent cameras that are released in that series. But it won't work on any of the Canon EF or EOS cameras themselves. This is RF mount only, and it's designed specifically for mirrorless. So let's jump in and let's take a closer look at it. So let's take a closer hands-on look at the 50mm f1.2. So as you can see, this is definitely a very substantial lens. It is physically large, 3.54 inches, or right at basically 90 millimeters in diameter. It is 4¼ inches in length, or 108 millimeters, and it clocks in at about 950 grams. And so this is definitely a significant lens, and you can see it really kind of stands out for its very wide, squat diameter. And just to give you kind of a physical comparison here, this is a fairly large 50mm f1.4 lens. It is the Sony Zeiss 50mm f1.4 that is also designed for mirrorless, Sony FE in this case. And as you can see, the RF 50mm f1.2L is significantly larger. Now, to be fair, it also has a larger maximum aperture of f1.2, and so that definitely does make a difference. So looking at it from up front, we can see we've got a 77mm front filter thread, very common, accessible, easy to use. Near the front, we have the control ring, which can be configured to operate a number of different things. And if you are a video person that wants to be able to control aperture in a clickless fashion, you can actually, it is an extra job and for Canon to do, but it can be changed to a clickless ring here to where you can do clickless aperture control from that. And so then you have the focus ring. Right now, with the camera off, there is no weight on the focus ring because it is focused by wire. But then when you turn off autofocus and you engage manual focus, you can then operate actual focus. I will note that the feel of it remains really light, and so some people will like that. Some people will find it a little too light, not enough resistance on it. On the side of the lens, you have two options. You have autofocus, manual focus selection tool there. And then you also, somewhat surprisingly, on a 50mm lens, you have a focus limiter. Because it can focus down relatively closely, in this case to 1.31 feet or 0.4 meters, you can eliminate some of that. And so you can go from 0.8 meters to infinity if you want to speed up autofocus a little. So you actually have a 0.19 times magnification, which is better than what the average 15mm is. Most of them are somewhere closer to 0.8 1.15 times, and so you've got an additional about 25% of magnification over the average lens, which of course makes it useful and is the primary reason why the focus limiter is helpful here, because you can focus down closer than you can on the average 50mm lens. Now inside you actually have 10 rounded aperture blades, so a slightly higher aperture blade count than usual, and that helps you to have consistently round aperture. Now if we look at the back of the lens, we find that there is a thick gasket here, part of the weather sealing of the lens. It does say that there is not only weather sealing in the lens mount, but also in the switch panel and then in all of the rings. And so there are varying seal points throughout the lens. Now also something interesting is that they claim that there is a vibration shock resistance, and so it's engineered as a part of this to be able to deter some actual shock to the lens barrel, and so it helps the focus and the settings, keeps the lens basically from getting decentered, which is an interesting thing. And so they note that this is designed for professional use and has a particularly robust optical and physical design. So optically, we've got 15 elements in 9 groups, including 3 aspherical elements and then 1 UD, or ultra low dispersion element, as a part of that optical design. So as you can see, this is a beautifully built lens. It's built to high, professional grade build. And so including some unique things like the unique anti-vibration housing in it that helps to give further durability to the performance of the lens. It also, of course, has, advanced weather sealing as a part of the design. It's got, the special sealing flooring coating on the front element. And so it is a lens that is going to be, ready to hold up for a long period of use. So the question is when it comes to the autofocus performance here, how does this lens perform when it comes to focus? It has a USM motor. Obviously in this case it's not a traditional USM because there is no mechanical coupling to any of the lens elements, but we're going to see how it actually performs when it comes to autofocus. First of all, let's take a look at the actual focus pulls when it comes to the amount of sound that is created and the smoothness of those pulls for video use. And so as you can see, this is certainly not a silent lens. There is some noise in the focus. You can hear both the kind of the shuffling sound of big elements. There's a lot of glass in that lens. So the sound of big elements moving back and forth, but also you can hear some of the focus motor at work as a part of that. But at the same time, one huge positive you can see is that even at f1.2, that is some amazingly sharp footage, particularly when it's focused in the foreground on the old timer. And so you can see that beyond that also, focus pulls are fairly smooth and fairly confident. They're just not really all that silent. And that, I think, is a good representation of autofocus in general on this lens. Autofocus is not silent, but focus speed is actually fairly good. And as noted earlier, it does have a focus limiter. And so if you're wanting to just eliminate the close focus portion of the frame, you can speed up focus even more because this lens, of course, can focus down fairly closely. So if you move that from the equation, focus speed becomes faster. Beyond that, however, there are moments where it feels a little bit deliberate in that it's not instant. You're definitely going to, see focus move along. And so it's having to move a lot of glass, and that becomes pretty obvious. So let's jump in and take a look at some photos and see how good focus is in real world situations. So let's take a quick look at autofocus here. And so obviously here, looking to focus on something moving into the foreground, emerging from a busy background. And so as you can see, focus has done a great job of grabbing onto that and giving me very accurate focus here in the foreground. Now in the next couple of images, I've focused at varying points here, all at f1.2. And so here we have something closer in the foreground. And then if we move out to a focus point that's more about 2 meters away, we can see that focus is accurate both, close and at medium focus distances, even with a lot of various things for focus to grab onto. Now, while the EOS R does not have dedicated PET IAF, in this case, because it didn't detect an eye per se, I just moved the flexi point on through the eye area. You can see that focus, however, worked really, really well. And you can see at f1.2, there's a beautiful amount of detail and contrast that's rendered there. Now, as we look at portraits, most of these are everywhere from f1.2. If I'm shooting at full body, I'll shoot f1.2, 1.4, 1.8, because I want a more shallow background. If I'm moving closer, just to increase depth of field a little bit, you'll see me close down aperture to f2 range. So in this case, I believe we've got f1.8. You can see though, and I took probably in this series, probably took 40 photos before my model froze. But anyway, we were able in all of them. I mean, there wasn't one where IAF was not accurate, where we didn't have great focus on the eyes. And so, at a variety of focus distances, you can see, I mean, just IAF is grabbed on beautifully. Here in another shot, IAF, once again, very, very good at f1.2 for this final shot, which shows that even, at full length distance, you can really blur out a background quite beautifully. But more importantly, IAF has grabbed on, and there is obviously enough resolution even at f1.2 to provide a beautifully credible result with a great cutout. So IAF worked great, autofocus worked great in my test. So as you can see, a lot of positives there, and I particularly noted when doing a portrait session that basically whatever focus distance that I worked from, whether I did full body, whether I went in for head and shoulders, when I even went in closer to frame tighter, that IAF in every situation worked good. And as I went back and reviewed images, many of them shot at f1.2, I had very, very good focused results. It's such a massive benefit to be able to use a lens like this and not to be tied into, trying to keep focus points towards a center cluster, and so that you have the greater sensitivity. Experience in times past has said that, a lot of Canon's L series lenses on, bodies like, say, my 5D Mark IV, they would often focus pretty well on outer points, but of course the outer points only go out so far, even on something like the 5D Mark IV. And there's definitely a sense that you lost a little bit of accuracy as you moved out towards rule of thirds angles. And so it is just a huge, huge asset to be able to have confidence in your focus, even at f1.2, no matter where you put the focus point in the frame. And so in many ways, I think that large aperture glass like this is really allowed to sing when paired with a good mirrorless focus system like that is found in the EOS R here. So stay tuned for part 2 of the video review that will be coming next week. In the meantime, if you'll take a look in the description down below, you can look at the image gallery and see more of the photos beyond what I'm able to share here in this video episode. There's also buying links if you'd like to purchase one for yourself. At the moment, in places like B&H Photo, the lens is a couple of $100 off. And so it might be a time to jump in if you've been waiting, previously to this point. There's also linkage there to follow me on social media, to become a patron, to sign up for my newsletter. And if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.